California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association.
California's Gold is brought to you by Ford, with a world of new ideas that make being out on the road more fun and more economical. Like Sync, the hands-free communication and entertainment system from Microsoft. It lets you order up practically anything you want to hear just by asking. And turn-by-turn navigation gets you exactly where you want to go. Ford hopes you enjoy traveling through California with Huell Hauser, perhaps in one of our remarkable new products.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser. Music and excitement is in the air. We're here for the beginning of a 10-day celebration here in the nice little town of Taft in the western part of Kern County. This is a blowout too, made even more special because it only takes place every 5 years. It's called Oil Dorado Days. Can you guess what Oil Dorado Days are all about? Well, I can tell you one thing for sure. These days and the people it honors are very much a part of California's gold. And we're here for the celebration. Now, before we do anything else, let's get our bearings, set the stage a little bit, because this is one of the most interesting and historic areas in California, and it's huge. It takes up the entire western part of Kern County. And when you're here, you're in oil country. Pumping oil wells are everywhere, and they should be, because this is the location of the huge Midway Sunset oil field, known by the locals as the Oil Patch, and it's the biggest oil field in the entire lower 48, surpassed only by Alaska. Oil has been at the very center of the economic and social life of this part of California for well over a century. And I've been visiting this part of our state for years now. First came here back in the early 90s when I spent the day at the West Kern Oil Museum in Taft with Jane Kinsey, a wonderful lady who not only ran the museum, but knew her stuff when it came to Kern County's early and colorful oil history.
We started this museum, and it's all volunteer. We did it because of this derrick. It was built in 1917 during World War I, drilled with cable tools, and it stands over the original well, and it is the original derrick with all its cable tools intact.
So this well is it still pumping oil?
No, it isn't. It has been until just a few years ago when it got too dangerous on the crown block to get up and pull it.
Now, there are not many derricks like this around anymore, are there?
No, there aren't. They were throwing all the derricks in the late 50s and early 60s, getting rid of all of the wooden derricks, and so that's why they thought this should be saved. It's part of our history, and it should be saved.
And that's why the museum is here.
That is why it is here.
Because of that wonderful old derrick.
That is correct.
From the old wooden oil derrick at the museum, next, I traveled out to the oil fields themselves and got to visit an actual oil rig operation and ended up climbing up to the top to see firsthand what it was all about. Do you switch jobs or do you keep the same job once you get in the business?
Well, you can if you want, but you can move around wherever the operator thinks you work the best, whether you work up here better or down on the floor better.
How'd you end up here?
Well, usually all worms, what they call worms when you first start out.
You're a worm?
No, when somebody first starts out, you get called a worm. You start out up here in the derrick.
Well, what are you now if you're not a worm?
Experienced.
You know, I just found out a newcomer is called a worm.
Yeah, well, you're not a newcomer anymore. You've been initiated now.
So I was
two up there a minute ago, yeah.
So I was a worm going up, but I'm experienced now that I'm back.
You've been here long enough to be experienced, yeah. I suppose you want to run it now, huh?
No, I just want to share in the profits.
Yeah, okay. Oh, the profits, yeah.
That's part of it, isn't
Yeah,
it?
you know how to make a small fortune in oil business?
How?
Start with a big one and not one to quit.
Now, the day I spent in Taft back in 1995 started my love affair with this part of our state and the people who live and work there. And I kept coming back, too. Years later, I spent the day with Pete Giannopoulos and Bruce Holmes, who took me on a tour of the oil communities of Fellows and McKittrick and showed me something I had never seen before: oil seeping up out of the ground right beside the road. Look at this, right on the side of the road. Look at this.
It's oozing out of the ground.
Wow.
Back when they were surveying the country, the surveyors would come through here and they spotted this. And when their survey was done, they came back, and some of them formed groups and they bought land. Now, I don't know up there, see where that little ledge is up there?
Look at this.
Once in a while, you'll see a little bubble of gas coming out.
Look at this. Look at this.
Yep.
Bruce, this is this really thick oil you were talking about.
Yeah, very viscous. It's
just coming out of the ground.
in the summertime. When it's hot, it's a lot more active. It flows better, and there's a lot of gas pops. And when it gets cold, the gas can't quite break out. But
can you do something with this oil?
well, they do stuff with it, believe it or not. But try not to get it on this new Derby of mine while you're swinging that stick around.
Yeah,
there.
I guess if it gets on you, it stays on you, doesn't it?
Pretty much. You just have to wear it out in the bed sheets like we used to do.
Look at this. I am really excited about this. This is about as, boy, got to be careful throwing it around.
This is why they discovered steam flooding, to poke the steam back out of the ground and loosen this to bring the oil up.
Wow. I don't think I've ever seen it. This is almost like tar.
Yeah, really,
look at this.
The McKittrick tar pits. And there was a dig in 32. One of the universities, either UCLA or USC, did a big dig up here in the 30s and got a lot of shark-toothed tiger stuff and out of the digs.
Let's walk over here by this old pumping unit over here, because they've got kind of an interesting rhythm and sound and sense to them, don't they?
Back in the old days, there was a different sound. They had gas engines that would operate this, the old wooden derricks, and they would pop. You could hear them popping during the night, and you got used to it. In fact, when you didn't hear it, you'd wake up.
They made that much noise.
Oh, yeah.
And it was constant.
Loud. Right.
Well, this one has its own sound, and it almost hypnotizes you watching it go up and down. I know the two of you all have been looking at something like this all your lives, but for those of us who are seeing it for the first time, it makes an impression on you, doesn't it?
Well, I was born on a raised on a lease. I'm going to die on a lease. But we had an old Superior 2-cycle engine right by my bedroom window, and then pow, 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 pow. And like you said, you get used to it. People come out, and then when it went down, you'd lay awake at night wondering what that sound was. It was silence, is what they called it. But no, I've listened to them all my life.
On that same trip to western Kern County, I attended Oil Dorado Days in Taft, a week-long event held every 5 years to honor the oil industry and the people who work in it. A celebration complete with a big civic luncheon, a parade, reunions, and a group of locals who patrol the streets of Taft, throwing people who haven't bought an Oil Dorado button into the hoosegow. All of this, a lot of fun, and a Taft tradition. And how time flies, because 5 years later, I was back in Taft once again to attend the Oil Dorado celebration. The civic luncheon this time was so big, it filled up a huge tent, because this Oil Dorado Days also marked the 100th birthday of Taft. I'm standing here with my friend Pete Giannopoulos. You were born here in Taft.
Correct.
You were raised here in Taft.
Right.
You still live here in Taft.
I haven't moved very far.
And Oil Dorado is bigger and better than ever, isn't it?
Would you believe that I've been on the committee for 50 years?
Well, I know this. I know 5 years ago when I was here, you invited me, and you've been calling me about every 4 or 5 months since to make sure that it's still on my calendar.
I know. And here you are, once
Here
again.
I am, and you know what? Really, this is a big deal, isn't it?
It is. I have never seen anything like it.
Now, the Civic Luncheon was a huge success, but the real centerpiece of this year's Oil Dorado Days took place right in the middle of town, and there were literally thousands of people on hand. People filled with pride to watch as a huge bronze sculpture dedicated to the oil workers themselves was officially unveiled. Okay, we're standing out in front of the star of the show, and I got to tell you, things have settled down a little bit. All heck was breaking loose around here about an hour ago.
I tell you, there was hundreds of people.
Thousands. This was a big deal.
Big deal.
Now, this is called officially, what's the title of this?
The oil worker.
The oil worker. It's
That's correct.
Sculpture, a big piece of sculpture that pays homage to the oil industry here in Taft, California.
Well, we designed this to pay homage really to the oil worker rather than to the community, to the companies or the industry.
Right.
They get plenty of publicity. The oil worker doesn't get much, so now he's getting his share.
And I got to tell you, this was all your idea, and the urban myth story about this is that you came up with this idea to do a sculpture like this while you were taking a shower.
I do my best thinking in the shower.
So that's a true story.
That's a true story.
Oh my gosh, and you just came up with the idea, presented it to the community, and away you went.
Well, I thought about it. My dad, really, I thought about my dad, my stepfather, my grandfather, and what they did and how they put up with the heat and the danger of the oil fields.
They all worked in the fields,
They all worked
or
in
the oil patch.
Yes, in the oil patch, and I felt it was about time we honor oil workers. So talked to some of my friends in the community, and they said, Vic, that's a great idea, and we got a committee together, and here we are.
That's congratulations to you. Boy, you deserve a lot of credit. Here's a guy who deserves a lot of credit too. Introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm Ben Victor. I'm the sculptor here.
You're kind of the quiet sculptor behind the scenes, right?
I guess
all
so.
This publicity today has been a little overwhelming. I've been watching you.
Definitely.
You've had your pictures made, you had to make a speech, you've been signing autographs.
Yeah.
When they came to you, what was the idea? You've got part of the derrick up here, but you've also got these human figures out here.
Well, the idea was to have a 1910 cable tool oil derrick and then have the oil workers in there working. And so, you know, it went on from there to become something that was really alive, and you can see that in the faces of the figures.
How long did it take you to put this thing, to go from the beginning idea to this? Were you cutting it close?
I was cutting it close. It was about 1.5 years of hard work and a good team behind me, too, of metal workers, and we all worked together to bring this here.
Now we've moved closer over to the figures themselves. And Ben, are these actual, well, what are these positions? What are these called? Each one of these, you have different jobs here.
Yep. Yeah, they're the different jobs that they would have done on a cable tool derrick, and this is the driller here. And they're just the prototype of the different oil workers, and so they're to represent all the men that worked hard in the oil patch.
They're not specific, and you know, people wouldn't recognize their uncle, but they might recognize the job their uncle did.
Yeah, they should be able to see their uncle in that figure, but it's not necessarily a certain individual.
And you had a lot of help on this, didn't you?
I definitely did. I called and bothered Fred Holmes.
There he is, Fred. You're an old oil man. Is that okay? You're not offended by that
But
term,
I'm not as old as this depicts, but I almost am.
Well, now your title for this whole thing was historical curator of authenticity.
I'm the only one that knows how it used to be.
So you all worked very closely together.
Yes,
You
yes.
letting him know exactly what they should be wearing,
yes.
what their hat looked like,
Yes.
what their overalls, everything.
Yes, and when he had it wrong, he would change it cheerfully.
What kind of things would you have wrong, for example?
Well, the way the things worked and the way the guys would work on them, you know, the tools and equipment have to go a certain specific way or they wouldn't actually work, and Fred has a great knowledge in that. And so like he said, if I had something wrong and there were quite a few things that I would get just not quite right, he would send me diagrams and blueprints and even little drawings of how they worked, and then we'd fix it.
And if there was ever a place where the people looking at it would pick up what was wrong with it, it would be here in Taft. They'd notice it, wouldn't they?
And they already brung up a few things, and I said, you're not a comedian, so shut up. You know
what you're doing? You're blaming any problems on the
Oh,
artist.
yeah.
I get to blame it on him.
Yeah. But then it's the artist's rendition if it's wrong, you know. That.
Well, so we're seeing, what is it here? What is this position?
This is the cable tool driller. So the walking beam was going, and there's a percussion drill that's pounding the hole. And he's bent over here like this, and he keeps letting this screw out, and that keeps the bit hitting on bottom.
Now, this is depicted as something that happened in 1910.
Yes.
Is there something like this still going on today, or is this outdated?
There's some water well drillers that still do this with a portable rig, but this outdated. We have rotary drilling now, you know, the rotary and mud circulating. This is very slow. This, to drill a well, would take 9-10 months, and we drill them in 2 days now.
So this was doing it the old-fashioned way.
3 or 4 feet, it make 3 or 4 foot a hole a day.
And you know what? It's a little warm from the sun, but it's probably not as warm as it was in reality when they were out there doing that.
Yes, and they did not have coolers or air conditioners or anything.
Hot, hard work.
Yes, that's right. And no, just shade is all you had.
Figure number 2, and this guy was the...
We call this the roustabout. He took care of all the little loose ends around the rig.
Well, now they've still got roustabouts,
yeah. They don't really help in the drilling process, but they do all the gopher work.
Kind of like a production assistant.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
So what was the rope for over here?
They didn't have anything to work with except ropes and pry bars, such that. So cable tow rigs had a lot of rope in them to tie up things and slings and such as that.
See, you never would have known this, really. No. And that's not, I don't mean that in a negative way, but that's what's so beautiful about this is that it's bringing this to a whole new generation of people who wouldn't know anything about this.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what each of these figures does. It shows a different part of the oil work that went on.
Was it hard for you to do this? Was it more difficult than you thought it would be?
Definitely. This is bigger and more complex than anything I've ever approached before in sculpture, and so it's really neat to see it done
here today. And when you say bigger, I know this is the largest bronze sculpture in California, maybe in the whole United States, one of the biggest. When you say difficult, do you mean this part of it, the size of it, or the detail on the figures themselves?
You know, kind of both. Doing the sheer scale of it, I mean, it's over 25,000 pounds of bronze was a big undertaking. But then also the detail. I used to joke around the studio that I had to hurry up and get these finished, and then I'd take out a toothbrush-sized tool and do the textures, you know.
Yeah, because this is, look, the camera will pick this up, but there's texture on the jeans.
Yep.
The buttons. Every single thing. And boy, I bet you've been over this with a fine-tooth comb too.
Yes. You know, generally artists just kind of throw stuff together, but this is, you know, it's right to scale and everything works like it's supposed to, you know.
You just said artists usually throw things together. I don't know.
He's right. I see too many of those around the country.
My wife calls it artist rendition. One time we had a picture made and it wasn't right. She said, well, that's artist rendition or artist something. But,
well, this is the
but I like stuff to be real life and, you know, and work. We might just fire this up and drill a well here, Hugh. You never know.
Figure number 3. You know what? I don't know much about it, but I think this is my favorite. It has more going on here. What's this all about?
Well, that's called the tool dresser. This is the driller's over there and the tool dresser's here, and he keeps the drill bits in order and all the tools. He's the number 2 guy in the drilling crew.
So this is the drill bit.
Drill bit, yes. That'd be down the bottom of that well making hole.
And he had to have muscles.
Oh yes.
I mean, this was hard work.
Yes. And this bit, like when it wears down, you put it in the forge and get it red hot, Then he mushrooms that back out to the whole size.
Wow. So now you even had to make all of this out of bronze, too.
Yeah, that had to be replicated perfectly, and Fred actually shipped out an actual drill bit and anvil from 1910, so I had the real thing to go by.
And we're ending up here. Put your foot up here. Look at this, Cameron. Now this is a TV first right here. It's revealed for the first time. Tell us what we're looking at here, Ben.
I got lucky there. I had no idea what kind of boots that Fred wears. I just sculpted those boots on him because I liked him, and then I showed up here with the figure, and I said, "Hey, Fred, nice boots. Hold them up here next to it." He's got the same boots.
So your boots are immortalized.
Oh, yeah.
You know, getting serious for a minute, this really is nice because it does pay tribute. And these were men who worked hard all their lives, never got any attention, any praise. The spotlight was never on them. They didn't ever get rich.
All this work was done with a man's back. There was no labor-saving devices. Everything, we always said out of the man's back, you know, so.
So this puts the spotlight on people who've never had the spotlight on them before.
Yes, the unsung heroes.
You got to feel good about that.
Definitely, yeah. This is the blue-collar worker of Taft.
And you know, here, if they've done a good job and got a good well, they don't celebrate. They just go on to the next well. They don't high-five and all that kind of stuff. It just, a day's work for a day's pay, and they were, you know, they were happy on the inside, but they didn't show any emotion.
You worked in the oil fields.
Yes, I started as a weed cutter in 1941.
Do you recognize these figures and what they're doing?
You're damn right, because I worked on them. I worked Derrick, and I worked in this guy's job.
You did this guy's job?
Yes.
Tough work? Hard work?
I had a couple of muscles anyway.
Did you get oil all over you when you worked out there in the fields?
Yeah.
Covered in oil?
I've been covered in oil. I've worked on a rig one time in Maricopa when it erupted.
Oh my gosh.
And I got plenty of oil because I was working up on the top of the derrick at the time.
Well, how do you feel about this monument here, this piece of sculpture?
I think it is great. I think it's a real beautiful thing to have.
Now, the huge bronze sculpture is impressive, but just as meaningful are the commemorative bricks located all around the outside of the sculpture. Bricks dedicated to people who lived and worked in the oil fields of western Kern County. Look at all these wonderful bricks out here. Look at these right over here. What is that smell? That, my darling, is the smell of money. That is oil. A part of me, a part of the oil industry. Rise early, work hard, strike oil. And this one is dedicated to Alan Williams, a life traveling the world in search of oil and adventure. And here's one right here. Daughter of the oil industry, man of many hats, of hard hats, man of many hard hats. All of these wonderful bricks out here honoring hundreds of people directly connected with the oil industry here in California. It's one thing to look at the names on the bricks when you don't know who the people are. It's another when you're directly connected with them by family. There's one for a grip ring driller. And here's the fellow who put the brick up. This is about honoring my
great-grandfather, Macumber. He was one of the many grip ring rotary drillers that migrated from the Gulf Coast to service all the grip ring rotary rigs.
Back in?
1910.
Boy, he was one of the early pioneers.
Yes, sir. And his two sons came with him. They were grip ring rotary drillers as well. They came from Saratoga, Texas, that part of the Gulf Coast.
I bet it was tough back then, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, they worked 12-hour shifts, and it was more robust than it is today.
Yeah.
But it was. I take my hat off to them.
Yeah. You know, that's the beauty of all these bricks. There's a story behind every single one of them.
Yes, sir.
And you got to be proud of them and what they did.
And another thing, in 1859, when the oil industry started with the oil workers and the industry that went with it. They were the best then, and they're still the best now today. And not many industries can say that. So it's amazing to be a part of it.
A lot of pride.
Yes, sir. You bet.
This is an interesting story. You're visiting Taft for the first time in
47 years.
You came back for Oil Dorado Day.
Yes. Well, I just happened to hear about it from my cousins, and I didn't realize that this Oil Dorado would be the Centennial.
Yeah.
And
well, what's it been like?
It's been very emotional, very. I'm just almost jumping out of my skin with excitement.
Was your family in the oil business?
Yes, my dad was in Standard Oil from 1934 to 1970.
And you said he was a
driller. He was a roustabout first, and then he was a driller.
They all worked up, didn't they?
And I'm immensely proud of him. You know, it's very hard work. He was working out in the fields when it was so hot, 105 degrees. He would take salt pills to withstand the heat, and take a little lunchbox. It was one of those black ones with a little hump.
Yeah.
You know, tuna fish sandwich, and celery and apple.
Did you see the sculpture today?
Oh yes, I was
there.
It
honors him.
Yeah, it was. I know. We got a plaque for him too, and it's
really?
He was a driller, a cowboy, and he was a World War II veteran. And
his name?
Louis Schutz. Louis Schutz. Yeah. It's recovering my roots and finding a very special part of myself.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Huell Hauser, and what a wonderful tribute to the oil workers of western Kern County, who are definitely part of California's gold. Now, this tribute is available on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.
Ford and the Ford dealers are proud to have brought you California's gold. Discover the new ideas we're developing to make being out on the road more enjoyable and more economical. Like EcoBoost, the turbocharged engine technology that gives you the power of a larger engine with surprising gas mileage. Ford is committed to making your traveling fun, economical, and environmentally responsible.